Order.
It's my turn.
Mr. Marston, you have just over 2 minutes, please.
Mr. Hoback talked about transparency and being straightforward with things. I think that's very important. I think Canadians expect that of us. You know, beyond the fact that this bill is significantly flawed, I mean, we've had witness after witness here talk about who is getting sideswiped by this. And Ms. Stoddard spoke of privacy rights concerns that are here. Another area of this bill is significantly flawed. Mr. Smith, are you aware that Mr. Oakley of Merit Canada, because I want to say that to be very clear here, because he's one of the people testifying, a competitor of yours, a direct competitor of your organization, has had unprecedented access to the PMO, other senior Conservatives, not only once or twice, but 72 times. He's met with Conservative MPs, senior staff dozens of times between October 22nd and October 24th alone. So after hearing testimony here today, sir, would you say that Merit had the possibility of making significant financial gains if this bill is passed?
Oh, absolutely. It's a dream come true for the Merit shop. Those visits to the PMO are, I didn't know the numbers, but I sure know the unions won't get that number.
And Mr. Hunter, we've had testimony at this committee implying that C-377 would cost the federal government a lot of money, several $1 million, in fact, to put into place and then to carry forward year after year. You've given some pretty clear study to this. You've brought forward your concerns. Your brief is very direct. Do you have any idea the scale of the cost that this will cost the federal government?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I
5 minutes.
appreciate the opportunity. I will just make one brief comment, and I only have one question. First of all, just in the interest of transparency, which seems to be the theme, we should take note that 4 of the 7 presenters here today are so interrelated, sitting on each other's boards of directors, that they constitute really one opinion. It's like one incestuous union-busting daisy chain of opinion here that it's really, you know, I know the history of the Merit shop. I've been dealing with them for years. They're created for the express purpose of busting unions in the construction industry. So that's a declaration to get started. But I'm interested particularly in one comment made by Mr. Smith, that the cost that we're looking at here, I mean, we may be witnessing the genesis of a boondoggle in terms of the complexity of the reporting contemplated here. And why would we set up this expensive bureaucracy just to further the private commercial interests of the Merit shop contractors, who are the true architects and protagonists of this bill? I mean, the sheer amount of time he spent at the PMO lately drafting this thing, Mr. Hebert might be carrying the ball, but it was crafted by a notorious union buster, Terence Oakey. So why would we want to spend all this money to further the commercial self-interest of one notorious union buster in that industry? Mr. Smith?
We will start with Mr. Boulouris for his 5 minutes. And just because of the number of witnesses, if I could ask you to direct it to the witness, and if you would allow enough time, obviously, for witnesses to answer within your time. Okay, on va commencer avec Mr. Boulouris, s'il vous plaît.
We'll start with Mr. Boulouris. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the many witnesses who are here today, who've come with interesting presentations. Now, we have demonstrated in this committee that this bill has too many faults to go forward and be adopted. There will be collateral damage and will even endanger Canada's economic soundness in a fragile period. This bill is useless, discriminatory, unconstitutional, costly, and excessively bureaucratic. Why is it useless? Because unions are responsible first and foremost to their members, and the requirement of transparency already exists under the Canada Labour Code, Section 110. It's discriminatory because the bill only targets union organisations, pension funds, trusts that are associated with unionised workers, but does not include other companies that benefit from federal government tax breaks. The Canadian Bar Association raised this concern recently. It is costly. Professor Logan explained that last week that in the United States there are fewer regulations, fewer requirements than in this bill, and that costs $6.1 billion. It's too bureaucratic because all the trusts and pension funds affected by this bill will have to deal with a hell of a lot of red tape and a higher administrative burden. So it's an example of big government. But that's not all. This bill is also intrusive and threatens privacy and personal information. A person who's retired from a union who receives a pension may have his or her address, name, etc. put on a public website. A firefighter who is on health leave may have his information published on a website, including his address. I'd like to ask the question of the Privacy Commissioner. What will be the impact on privacy? What will be the impact of those individuals on those individuals that will be affected by this bill? And what about the Privacy Information Act? Thank you, Sir. I'd like to say initially that there have been amendments that have been put forward that will reduce breaches of privacy. As far as other parts of the legislation is concerned, I do believe that there are problems when it comes to privacy. Anyone who earns over $5,000 will have their personal information, the amounts that they receive, published on an internet site, posted rather. Now, in countries that are similar to us from a cultural point of view, there are ways of ensuring transparency within unions with fewer breaches of privacy. Thank you. The bill also ensures that the contracts that unions will allocate to private organisations that contract services to them will also have to be disclosed. And that begs questions. I am sure that Quebec Employers Council don't want strategic information to be in the public arena with respect to their competitors. Is there a way to protect the interests of businesses that don't want their information bandied about in the public arena? And I'm talking about the costs of the work that they provide to union organisations. Madam Commissioner, is there any mechanism that protects the interests of private businesses that deal with unions so that their contract information isn't disclosed? Not to my knowledge, but I can respond in writing at a later stage. Well, that could cause serious problems, in my opinion. Now, I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Wheeler, if I may. Mr. Wheeler isn't there. No, it's the Wheeler Business, Wheeler Investment Council. Mr. Watson, now, in your opinion, what would be the cost to your organisation of managing all the requirements under Mr. Hebert's legislation? What workload and resources would that require? Mr. Watson?
Watson or Hunter.
Okay, one or the other, please. Brief response.
It would be fairly